are you doing? Welcome back to my channel, Admayora. Today I'd like to talk about something that is obviously connected with literature, arts, culture, but it isn't specifically about literature. I'd like to talk about a figure who has literally changed the English history and the perception of Europe, and it is a sort of a legend today as well. And I'm talking about a very special monarch, a very special queen, Elizabeth I Tudor. So Elizabeth I Tudor, this is an image of her, the icon that she really wanted us to see, or better, she wanted her people to see it for a very specific reason. We would call it marketing today. And why did she do that? For a variety of very interesting reasons. Now, the image and the figure of Elizabeth Tudor is very well known, and we associate her with a period in England called the Golden Age. We've already talked about that a little in my video about Shakespeare. Shakespeare wouldn't have existed as an author, as a playwright, without Elizabeth. The Golden Age was it was a splendid moment in England, and it concerned arts, obviously, literature, theatre, but also obviously economics, politics, and so on and so on. And it came in a very difficult and problematic period in English history. When Elizabeth was queen, but she was an unwanted queen at first. Why? Well, she was the daughter of Henry VIII and Anne Boleyn. So she was Protestant and she was considered illegitimate. Okay? The queen before her, so the first heir, the first queen after Henry VIII, was Mary Tudor. Mary Tudor was the daughter of Henry VIII and Catherine of Aragon. So she was Catholic and legitimate. Okay, and she was the true heir of the English crown. And when she died, it was so difficult for Elizabeth. She was only 25 years old, to manage the situation and to actually sit on that throne where so many noblemen at court wanted a Catholic monarch. Okay, a legitimate monarch, and even Protestant noblemen didn't like a woman on the throne anyway. So first of all, we have to remember that father Henry VIII decided to divorce from Catherine of Aragon and to actually marry Elizabeth's mother, Anne Boleyn, and then a few others, because his first wife, Catherine of Aragon, so Mary's mother, wasn't able, well, we can say so, to give him a son. Now, in this, he asked for permission to the Vatican to divorce from Catherine of Aragon. He didn't have that permission, and so he decided to create his own church, the English church, the Anglican church, and the spiritual head of the Anglican church was the Archbishop of Canterbury, but the head of the church was actually the monarch, was the king, was Henry himself. He destroyed abbeys and monasteries and robbed them, and he did so many other horrible things, and for that reason the Catholic side of England was extremely angry. When Mary Tudor obviously became queen, she tried to eliminate everything that could remember her or could remember Catholic people of this Protestant side of England, and that is why Mary is called Bloody Mary, because she did it in a very violent way. She died young, and she hadn't been able to eliminate that Protestant part, okay, this very strong Protestant side of England, and so Elizabeth tried to rely on that Protestant side. But even those noblemen, even those people, they didn't trust a woman to be a monarch. And on the other side, the Catholics wanted a Catholic monarch on the throne, obviously. There was another possible Catholic queen, and she was Mary, Queen of Scots, Mary Stuart. And so some Catholic noblemen wanted Mary to be queen, and Elizabeth saw Mary as a possible competitor, as an enemy. Mary was married to Francis of Valois. She was the Queen of France at the time, but then Francis died very young, after just 1 year of his reign, and so Mary came back to Scotland, where she married Lord Darnley, who could also have a claim to the English throne. So the idea of Mary and Darnley giving an heir could actually be a threat to Elizabeth's throne, which actually happened, because Mary, Queen of Scots' son, was James, and he became James I, Stuart, King of England and Scotland. Well, anyway, Elizabeth had to find stability, to find strength and alliances. Everyone was against her, okay? Catholics on one side, the Church, the Vatican, and Protestants on the other side as well. And England was threatened. Well, on one side, she considered herself threatened by Scotland. Actually, Scotland was threatened by England, because they were attacking Scotland, trying to eliminate that possible enemy and that possible claim to the throne. But obviously, there were stronger countries in Europe, like, for example, Spain, a very Catholic country, where King Philip, we can say, he controlled also part of the French court. Philip married the daughter of Caterina de Medici, who was the queen mother and regent of Charles and Henry of Valois in France. So obviously France and Spain were absolutely connected, and they were very Catholic. So the situation was extremely complex for Elizabeth. There were many suitors, and many people wanted her to get married, because getting married could be the best way to secure her throne and to find stability. She also considered a few possibilities, like the Archduke of Austria, or the Dauphin of Spain, okay, Don Carlos, and other situations. But she understood quite soon that finding a husband meant losing her own power as a queen, and that wasn't wise. Because she had eventually to find a Catholic husband, okay, in order to please the Catholic side of her country. But in that way, she would have been just a woman, okay, and the king would have been the real monarch, even if he was a stranger, or even if he was lower in estate. So she made an important decision at one point, and she worked on herself. She worked on her own image. She decided to devote herself to her country. She decided to be the Virgin Queen, which has nothing to do with her private life. There are a lot of stories and gossip. We are not really interested in that. We know she was in love with Lord Robert Dudley of Leicester. We know that, but this has nothing to do with her private life. The Virgin Queen was a queen that didn't want to get married. She just wanted to marry her own kingdom. In fact, she said, even though I have got the body of a woman, I want and I will wear the crown of a king. So in order to be a monarch, she couldn't be just a woman. She had to be a king. She had to be, as strong as a man. And in order to do that, in order to be the Virgin Queen, in order to convince her people that she wanted to marry her kingdom and devote herself to this cause, she decided to change and to work on her own image. This is why we find these icons, and they're almost, if you have noticed, all of them are quite the same, okay? Elizabeth decided to remove the taint of her sex. What does it mean? That, pink or red cheeks or lips were considered a symbol of femininity, okay? She removed that with a sort of a mask, okay, white mask. It was quite useful to cover the signs of the smallpox, okay? But that wasn't the only reason. That was also important to become an icon. She had no sex. She wasn't a woman anymore. Even her hair, her red hair, were often substituted by a wig that was huge and was a symbol of power as well as the crown. It is interesting to notice how both Elizabeth Tudor and Mary Stuart, Mary Queen of Scots, were both red-haired. And it is very interesting to follow how the two queens, two very powerful and charismatic queens, one was Catholic, the other was Protestant, one was Tudor, and the other was Stuart. So they were sort of two sides of the same coin, and we can consider one the alter ego of the other. If you're interested in that, I could make a video talking about Queen Mary, Mary Queen of Scots. Her life was extremely interesting, and she chose a completely different path from Elizabeth. Unfortunately, she died. She was executed by order of Elizabeth, while in England in exile. She had lost her throne, but her child, the child that she had with Lord Darnley, who was Catholic and whom she decided to marry in order to have a claim to the English throne. So her child, James, became James the First, okay, King of England and Scotland, so the first king, the first Stuart king in England. So this is very important. The story of Mary, Queen of Scots, is very important too. Also in this case there is so much there are romance and so much gossip and other stuff. It's not so interesting. The most interesting part is the real historical side. Anyway, back to Elizabeth. She decided to remove the taint of her sex, to use these wigs and to use this hair to be even more imposing. And the way she used to get dressed with this farthingale and ruff and puffed out sleeves, they all give a very an image that wasn't very human. She was more of an icon. we can say that the Catholics gave people also a feminine image to worship, and it was Holy Mary. Now, she didn't want to substitute Holy Mary or be worshipped in any way, but she somehow tried to do the same, to give them an icon of a virgin queen, okay, who, well, she was a woman, but she wasn't a woman at the same time, because she was a symbol, okay, a symbol of purity, a symbol of devotion, a symbol of grace and power at the same time. And she did it, creating her image, renouncing to her private life, at least, well, not really, but anyway, this was the idea that she gave to her kingdom, to her people, to the court itself. And she also wanted to be represented in that way, and to make those images as widespread as possible, so that people could actually fix that image in their head and have a point of reference somehow. Now, this was a very clever and smart move, because she was independent, she was strong. It wasn't easy to somehow find stability. Well, I'm talking about the court, but I'm talking about the whole kingdom right now, so Catholics and Protestants, and there were she was inheriting a very difficult situation also from an economical point of view. There were pestilences at the time, and that was one of the reasons why theaters had been closed, okay? When the situation improved and also the sanitary condition was improved, so pestilences were over and she could reopen theaters. This is why I say that Shakespeare wouldn't have existed as a playwright, because there were no theaters open actually. She could reopen them, and arts in general, not only theater, literature, but arts in general, they flourished. And this is also especially because people weren't starving anymore, because as I always say, if you are starving, if your children are starving, probably poetry or theater or philosophy can't be your first concern, okay? But when you are living your life, when you have something to eat, then you can also devote yourself to arts. And a very important move, a strategic move, was against Spain. So Spain was the most powerful country in Europe at the time. King Philip well, the Spanish fleet, Invincible Armada, was extremely powerful. All Europe was scared by Spain. France especially was feeling this influence, and Spain and the Vatican were allies. Obviously, Spain had already started with exploring the new world, finding out new products, opening new commercial routes. So the fact that the English fleet could win against Invincible Armada was we can say it was a key moment in Elizabeth's reign. Her fleet was, well, her ships actually were lower, were faster, and armed with long range guns, and so they could quite easily win, and that was a great gain, because England became more powerful, and also in Europe the position of England increased, and England started to discover, to explore the new world as well, and so basically England became one of the most powerful nations in Europe. So this is basically the story of of Elizabeth the First. She was born in 1533 and she died in 1603. And as I said before, her heir was James. Mary, Queen of Scots' son, with Lord Darnley. Mary wrote a letter to Elizabeth just before losing her throne, and she said that she renounced to her claim to Elizabeth's throne, but she actually entrusted her child to her as to be the future king. In fact, he became king of Scotland and king of England with the name of James the First Stuart. So Elizabeth was the last Tudor monarch, sovereign in England, and then James the First was the first Stuart monarch, and a new era started, the Stuart era, which was a very interesting era. We have already talked about that in my video, The Rise of the Novel, when we talked about how the modern novel was developed during the basically the more or less the 17th, 18th centuries, and why. So the change of society after the discovery of the new worlds, obviously there were many changes, and the middle class became stronger and stronger, and so many different happenings. But for the moment, okay, Elizabeth was certainly the most important figure of her time, and she has influenced history, arts, and other queens, okay, throughout history. Even Queen Victoria was actually influenced by Elizabeth, and I know there are many other stories that are told about Elizabeth in movies and books and TV shows and so on and so on. They're interesting, okay, they can be fine, they can be entertaining, but real story is always the most entertaining topic of all. So I hope that was useful. If you find this little historical cameos interesting, I can talk a little bit about Mary Queen of Scots. She's also an amazing woman and an amazing historical figure. So thank you very much for following me, and I'll see you very soon again with the English literature, American literature, German literature, languages, and okay, there are so many playlists on this channel, and I hope you like them all. So give me a like if it was interesting, please, and subscribe my channel. Thank you so much. See you soon. Bye.